Hi everybody, how you guys doing today? Hope everybody's having a wonderful day today. So yes, how is everybody? I hope everybody had a wonderful day or is having a wonderful day. Had a wonderful day yesterday and hopefully a wonderful day tomorrow. Today I want to talk a little bit more about family matrix. I know I mentioned that the other day. Just kind of a brief, maybe what is it, what to expect if you ever went to one. Again, I would highly recommend it. I'm going to just start, I guess, with my introduction to it. So I got into Best and learning. I don't think I'd certified with laughter yoga yet, but I was just learning about Best. I was still learning with, I guess, energy healing, energy work, different modalities, things like that. My mentor, Chris and Melanie, they're a couple. My mentor said they were going to go to this thing, and it's called the Family Matrix, and asked me if I would be interested in it. It sounded interesting, just the name. I was like, what is that? Okay, it's a way to realign the family to a greater higher good. Okay, I definitely want my family aligned to a greater higher good, or I definitely want the best for my family, the greatest that I can give them in a sense. And so they said, okay, well, it's this much to just be in the room, and it's this much to be a family of focus. Which do you prefer? I'm not going to give you prices because different people may vary, but anyway, I said, yes, I'll be a family of focus. What does that mean? And they said, well, that means that, they actually work on you and your family. It's not, being in the room, you benefit from it, but it's not as powerful as doing your family's work in a sense. Okay, yeah, I'll be a family of focus, so I paid it. Not really, again, knowing what to expect. They said, okay, meet me at this address at this time. I was like, all right. It was about 3 hour drive from my house, if I remember right, which seemed kind of a bit much, but I was like, well, I trust them. And if they say it's worth it and it's powerful, worth my time, worth my money, all that, just overall, okay, I will take your word for it. Not just a person of influence, but somebody I trust, somebody who I look to for, say, expert advice when it comes to some of this energy working, energy healing. So if you guys say so, all right, I'm on board. We went there. Basically, everybody circled up in the living room. I was not the first family to go. It was somebody else, and it was interesting. So again, I'll kind of run through it and then get a little bit more into it. But the person standing up that was the family of focus. You know what? We'll just skip them. I'll go to me. So they did theirs, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. So then it went to my turn, and they said, okay, you want to be the family of focus. And I said, sure. Oh, not sure, but yes. And they asked me a few questions to try to get my intention, I guess, of why I wanted to realign or what I wanted to realign in my family in a sense. And so I was talking to them, and, basically it boiled down to relationships. I want to have better relationships with, my family, with finding the girl of, the love of my life, whatever, having a better relationship with money so that it flows to me and I just better handle it, maintain it, just overall relationships. Very different aspects, I guess. But I want to improve my relationships is kind of what it boiled down to. At first it started what everybody wants, money and love. That's the biggest things. Well, I need more money, or I want to find the love of my life. Those are usually the ones that I hear the most, whether it's with Best, Family Matrix. Not so much laughter yoga, because that's just kind of going there to laugh and have fun. But usually when I talk to clients, those are the ones that they're looking for, and myself included. So anyway, they said relationships. I said, okay. Now, me being a male, they said you need to go around the room and choose somebody to proxy as your father. They also got into like whether he's living or not, and all that affects different things, and I'm not going to get all into that, but they had me choose my dad, and then they had me choose my mom, and then they had me choose me, if I remember right. But maybe it was my dad, me, and then my mom last. And that's usually your first family matrix is going to be the focus of just your immediate family, you, mom, and dad. There may be siblings involved, but I don't think so. At least for mine, I don't recall there ever being siblings involved. I just remember it being us. This is what's interesting. Like I said, I picked somebody to proxy as me. They said it doesn't matter. It could be boy or girl. And actually, I'm going to step back a little bit. So proxying is basically I'm having somebody stand in for me. I'm having somebody stand in for my mom and dad. They're taking their energy, if you will, and they give it back at the end of the matrix. I almost want to say embodying it, but I don't mean they're just stepping into their energy to help facilitate, or maybe not facilitate, help fulfill this role in the family matrix. So for me, I picked them, and then it was interesting because if you picture it, the room, everybody's in a circle. Everybody's lined up in chairs around. First, I went to the different people and picked them. This was a little interesting too. Somebody for proxying for me, and they said, just whoever feels right. Just kind of look around the room, use, let your intuition or the energy kind of pick. What was interesting is I picked this young lady to proxy as me. Now, it didn't matter that she was a girl. and I'm a guy, proxying energy or the proxy itself or taking on the energy, it didn't necessarily matter. And then I was to align them somewhere. If that circle is my world or universe, I needed to go and align them where I thought they were, facing in, facing out, different things like that. And so I do that, and then I go sit down, and the facilitator takes over. And she goes and talks to them all and gets them to realign, and then towards the end plugs in certain energies to help keep that alignment strong. If I remember right, they used angels to help align that once we were aligned properly, in a sense. And what that means when we were aligned, and I don't remember, this is just kind of throwing it out there, but say mom and dad were standing next to each other or across the room, and they might be facing in, looking at each other. They might be facing different ways, like one could be looking at one and the other could be looking at the other, or they could both be together looking or separate. It's really interesting because each one aligns different. And then again, the facilitator will go and talk to them, and I just sat down and watched, and it was very powerful to hear these people that were proxying, not just as me, but also my parents, say things that my parents would say and act or be in a manner that was fitting. It was interesting. It was really like, wow, there's something to this. And that was just listening. That wasn't even when it was all said and done. So again, when it was all said and done, we were aligned. We were all facing the same way. We were all kind of shoulder to shoulder in, I would say, harmony. The family aligned. And then again, she plugged in different energies, angels of how I understood it was there were certain, again, angels was what they used, or the names, like, and I don't remember, but I think Raphael, and he was, of healing and health. And so that energy of healing and health that he stood for and represented was plugged in to help keep my family aligned. I'm probably not making a whole lot of sense, but it's kind of the understanding that I have with it. Once that's over, or once it's all aligned, the person that's proxying for me comes out, and I step in, and it's interesting because they say, how does this alignment feel? And then do you accept it? And to me, it felt really good, so I accepted it. But I thought that was very powerful in itself, because you could do a family matrix, you could do the alignment, and then when the person steps in back into their own power, in a sense, when they, take back the proxy, they could say no. They could be like, this doesn't feel right. This isn't the alignment I was looking for. Now, would you have to do another family matrix? Yeah, probably. I don't know. I've never ran into that. Every family matrix I've seen seems to go very successful. So once that was done and I accepted it, then in order to give back that energy, like I said, because, they're proxying, say for my mom and dad, we hugged everybody that was in the matrix that dealt with it. Not everybody that was on the circle watching, but everybody that was in participating. The person that proxied is me, the person that proxied is my parents. We all hugged, and that's the idea, is that when you hug, you're giving back that energy as well as stepping back into your own and just letting it go. It's very powerful. But after that, I was able to go and talk to the lady that I asked to proxy for me. What was really interesting is she was maybe a year or two older than me. Or no, she was a year or two younger than me, if I remember right. And what really surprised me as I was talking to her, and she had 2 kids. Well, I have 2 kids. I've got 2 boys. And if I remember right, she had 2 girls. But maybe she had 2 boys too. And they were right around the same age. They were maybe a few months younger than each other, or maybe a year or so. But it was like the coincidences when I started talking to this girl between me and her were uncanny. Like, it was like, whoa. Like, I had no idea. As far as I knew, she was just this lady sitting in a chair, and I felt inclined to ask her to proxy for me. And afterwards, talking to her, our lives had a lot in common. Very, very similar. It was almost like you couldn't plan it better. You couldn't. It was amazing, phenomenal. Like, whoa. Mine was like, dude, maybe there really is something to this. Like, again, don't get me wrong. Before this, I had sat there and I had watched the family matrix of my family, or the realignment of my family, and it was huge. That energy alone was big. But then when I went and talked to this lady and I found out all these similarities that me and her have, just as a person, as a being, not necessarily our families, I was shocked again and blown away. I was amazed. It was really something. So that was my first influence, or my first taste of family matrix. And when I first did it, it was almost like family. Oh, hey, how you doing today? Welcome. I was just talking about Family Matrix and my first experience with one. I'm going to move on and talk about some of the other ones that I've learned. Family Matrix or Family Sculpting. Okay, yeah, what it is it's a way to realign the family to a greater, higher good. Now, that sounds kind of weird, but an easy way, or better way that I have to explain that, is in Bruce Almighty. If you've ever seen that movie, there's a part where he ropes the moon and pulls it down. And then the next morning he wakes up and there's all these tidal waves and floods because the moon got, say, pulled out of orbit or pulled out of its hierarchy. Well, families have a same or similar hierarchy, and when the families get out of hierarchy, then negative patterns form, whether it's drug abuse or alcohol or whatever. And so what the family matrix does is it helps go realign the family to the proper hierarchy, to the greater higher good of the family. Again, that's the easiest way I know how to explain it. Super powerful technique. It's awesome. I hope that kind of gives you an idea about what the family matrix is. Usually there's a group of people. Okay, not really. Sorry. No, understandable. I'm still learning this myself, and that's part of why I'm doing this, is to help explain it to you. And so hopefully I can explain it in a way that you'll understand, and then I will understand it better also myself. I'm going to grab my notes. I'm sorry to hear that. You can look for it in your city. I'm not sure where you're from. I first heard about this through the Rapid Eye Institute. They're in Salem, Oregon. The family matrix it's designed to release negative family patterns, such as addiction, low self-esteem, abuse, or anything that's not working for the family, and help realign it to, again, the greatest, highest good for the family. No, it's not Scientology at all. I don't even get into Scientology. I don't know much about that other than Tom Cruise likes it. Yeah, sorry. I don't know. No, it's its own healing modality, or healing energy work. Again, that's mainly what I don't really promote any religions here. With religion, I just say proceed with caution and go with your gut instinct or your intuition on that. I'm not promoting any of that stuff. Yeah, and Family Matrix is a little weird, or at least for me to kind of explain. That's, again, part of why I'm doing this. Let me explain a family matrix that I've done, and maybe that will help. I don't know. Okay, he says, well, what are the benefits it would have? Again, the benefits would be realigning your family to a greater higher good. This is something that actually happened. It was very powerful and amazing. There was a family matrix that took place. Okay, he says, you keep saying realigning your family. What does that mean? Like the heavens or the solar system is in a certain alignment, a certain hierarchy in a sense, a certain orbit, if you will. Well, families have or need to be in a similar alignment. Mom and dad at the top, and then the kids. And even birth order is very important with the family matrix too. So if you're doing a family, let's say of 4, you have mom, dad, and the 2 kids. He says, is this like your Saturn's return when you're 30? I'm sorry, I don't know what Saturn's return when you're 30 is. I've never heard that. Is that astrology or? Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard of that. That's interesting. Definitely more to look into. Thank you for that. I will definitely look into that. Okay. I think we just use the astrology terminology to kind of make sense to help explain this to people, because people do understand that the planets are in a alignment, or I say hierarchy, but I don't know if you would think. I guess planets are in a hierarchy. I think everyone is a Saturn's return around late 20s and 30s, and your life either changes drastically or not at all. Okay, I'm going to sidetrack just a little bit. There is a book called Iron John. It's more for male viewers, but it does talk about that. It talks about in your 20s and your 30s, you go back and you visit Iron John and you ask about this ball. It's a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Again, I don't know about the Saturn's return, but I'll definitely look into that. Okay, yeah, thank you. So with the family matrix, it's a realignment. You get out of your family. Oh, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. I'm going to go to my notes real quick. Maybe let me just read over those. So sorry, just one moment. Well, thank you for being here. I do this every day. I talk about different energy healing modalities that I've ran into, and I personally want to learn more about this stuff. I find it fascinating. I can only tell you from my personal experience. Again, with the family matrix, the one that I personally had for myself was very powerful. I did notice a change in my family. I started to sidetrack and talk about another family matrix that I was a part of. I really didn't do anything but sit there and witness it. And what was really powerful is this gentleman, he wasn't in good relationships with his family, or let alone his brother in particular. I swear, this is most people go, but that's bullshit. Right after, minutes after the family matrix was over. Okay, we're done. We concluded it. Everybody hugged, gave back the energy. The guy gets a phone call from his brother that he hadn't talked to in years, and his brother wants to bury the hatchet, and is like, hey, we're getting older, and I love you. You're my family, and I want to be a part of your life. I want you to be part of my life. To me, that was huge. That was like, holy cow. Like, We just realigned this guy's family, and moments later his brother calls to reconnect and, realign, and if you will, and it was huge. I was very impressed by it. Another family matrix that I was a part of was for my mentors, my aunt and uncle. I've talked about them, and it was for their family. It's my aunt and uncle. I've known them my whole life, or yeah, my whole life they've known me. Anyway, their oldest son is around the same age as me, a couple months younger than me. But I know all of them. They have 8 kids, if I remember right. Been in close contact with them all. Love the family to death. But they did a family matrix, and what was really powerful to me was, so their family wasn't there except for them. It was, my aunt and uncle, and again, they picked other people in the room to proxy as their children and also themselves. And then they step back and they sit down, and the facilitator goes around and talks to the family and sees why the family's out of alignment and what they could do to get back into alignment once the family was all in alignment. Well, while this was happening, I was sitting, if this is a circle, if you will, I was sitting down here, and they're moving around talking and, with the facilitator, and sometimes they say, oh, I don't like being over here by this person, so they wanted to move over next to a brother or sister that they felt more comfortable with, or even mom and dad. And it was awesome. My youngest cousin, he's kind of a goofball, kind of silly, likes to be very playful. He came over and stood by me, and I could feel his energy. Like, you talk about, you have a bubble, if you will, or your biofield. And the moment that I got inside his biofield, I could not stop laughing, and I could feel him. It was, again, I'm explaining this in the words that I have in the best way that I can, but it was amazing. It was like he was there standing next to me and told me the funniest joke I'd ever heard. I could not stop laughing. And then when the facilitator called him over to go talk to another part of his family, and I could feel his energy move away, I stopped laughing. Oh, sorry, one moment. No, you're fine. Interrupt if you need to. No. So if you found somebody to do the family matrix, you could go just by yourself. For me personally, that's what I did. I went to the place and I paid for, no, they don't have to be willing. In fact, none of them even have to know that you ever did the family matrix. You can go there and you can show up, so there's a room full of people usually. You can actually even do this with, like, say, action figures. Like if you had, like a chapstick and, like this guy right here, you could say, okay, this is proxying for dad, and then like this is, I don't know, chapstick or whatever is proxying for mom. Or you can use items. You don't necessarily have to use people. Now it's much more powerful to use people because they can somewhat channel, if that's the right word. Again, let me go back to my first experience. I showed up. It was a room probably 20-30 people. Maybe that's a bit much. Maybe it's more closer to, about 20 maybe. And we're all sitting in a circle in chairs. And I stand up. I have to choose people to proxy as my family members. Now again, your first family matrix is usually just you and your parents. So me being male, I went and picked my dad first, and then I believe myself, and then my mom last. But maybe it was my dad, my mom, and then me. It's been a while since I did this, a couple years ago. And then I go sit down. So let's say if you had a family of 6 and you go to one of these, you would pick other people in the room to proxy as people in your family, and they can tell you no, they can say no thank you, but most of the time, from what I've seen, people that go to these are willing to help. And so if you ask them to proxy for, your mom or your dad or yourself or, brother, sister, they will say yes. And this is another thing I thought was interesting. Even though I'm a boy, I'm a man, I asked a lady roughly around the same age as me to proxy as me during my family matrix. It still worked. It was still just as powerful, even though she was a female and I was a male. That didn't matter. Once I had these 3 people proxying as my mom and dad and myself, I moved them around the circle. And again, if you picture, this is the room, and so the circle of people on the outside. I moved them around, and then there's different patterns you can look for as the facilitator. Like if they're in a triangle is the strongest pattern, and so I know that that's been in effect for a while because over the years it's strengthened. Now it might be a negative pattern, but if I put mom here, dad here, and me here, I can see that, or the facilitator, I wasn't the facilitator for my own family matrix, but I could, you could see, or even with my aunt and uncle when they realigned their family, if mom, dad, and then, brother, sister, the facilitator will look and see where and how everybody's aligned. Again, is mom and dad facing each other? Are they facing away from each other? That gives big clues to the facilitator, and then again, they go in and they talk to them. Now, using inanimate objects, like I said, you could use salt and pepper shakers, or like this little figurine with, this Lego guy or whatever. You can use that stuff, but the power that I saw with using actual people is sometimes they'll say, well, I feel this way. Like with my aunt and uncle's family matrix, there was a point where one of their daughters said, I feel this way. And it was really powerful because we all knew that. That was something, just the way the person talked that was proxying, it was right on. Like it felt like my cousin was there, standing there talking to us, not this other person. And so it was huge. Anyway, they go through and they talk to everybody, and they try to realign them to a greater, higher good. Again, I apologize if that doesn't make complete sense, but that's roughly how a family matrix works. You have the facilitator, and then you have the family of focus. Again, if I was a family of focus, then, and let's say I have 2 boys, so if we were going to do my family of myself, my ex-wife, and my 2 kids, I would pick those 4 people. I would put them in the circle where I feel is right, and then I go sit down, and the facilitator takes over and talks to them and aligns them to a greater, higher good. Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope that answered it. Is there footage of this process? Usually not, because what's spoken in a family matrix is usually personal to the family. Now, I have thought about doing family matrices and recording them for your personal viewing pleasure. You might be able to go to YouTube and Google Family Matrix, and there might be a demo. Understanding purposes, there might be footage of it. Now, again, you also might want to look under Family Sculpting by Brett Hilgers. The book was Love's Hidden... no, I apologize. It based on Virginia Starr's Family Sculpting. And then Brett Hilgers has a book. You might be able to find some footage. I don't personally have any. Yeah, do you have any other questions? Maybe any part that you're really unsure on, I can try and explain or sure up a little bit. I hope I'm explaining this in a way that you can at least grasp at it, at least have a small idea. How much information do you have to spill to these people about your family? Usually not too much. The facilitator that I worked with, I trust wholeheartedly. Her name's Linnell. She's the leader of the Rapid Eye Institute up in Salem, Oregon, and she was the facilitator for my family matrix. Again, when it first started, she asked me some basic questions, just kind of what I was looking for, and it kind of boiled down to better relationships. Again, when I first started, I was like, I want to find the love of my life, and I want to make more money. Again, that's what most people, with what I've seen in really most of any of these healing modalities, first come into, is they want a better life. What's going to give that to them is more love in their life and the money to have the life they want. And so, to me, it boiled down to relationships. I wanted better relationships with everybody. And so, I didn't really talk too much about my family. All I really had to say was my dad and my mom, and they're still alive, and that was kind of it. Now, what they revealed during the family matrix, some of it was a little personal, but nothing too horrible, or you're not telling your life story. You're not airing out your dirty laundry, if that's what you're worried about. I never saw any of that in any of the family matrix I've been participating in. None of that. It was more just, well, I feel unhappy because you give this person more attention, in a sense. Okay, well, why do you feel that way? Do you truly feel that they favor that person over you? And, no, but that's just how I feel. And so I hope that probably sounded weird. But the people that are proxying, talking to the facilitator, that's the kind of stuff they talk about. Or, like say if your dad has a saying where he always says, what's right is right, that might come out of the person's mouth. And the person had never said that before. I've been to a couple family matrix. Some of them I didn't know anybody there in the room, and some of them I knew quite a few people in the room. That's how I could say some of these people would never say what they said during the family matrix, because they weren't necessarily them. They were proxying for your family member. Again, your family doesn't necessarily even need to know that you've done this. Wait, so how do these people say things your father said? Okay, so again, when you first start the family matrix, you're going to pick other people in the room to proxy as yourself as well as your family members. Again, keep it easy. We'll just say you, mom, and dad. How do they know what to say? I don't know. They're taking on the energy of your dad, or they're taking on the energy of your mom and proxying. I don't know. Give me one moment. I'm going to see if I can get in a better definition. Again, I do this because I'm still learning myself. Oh, okay, you understand the concept of proxying. Okay, they're standing instead of your mom and dad, and when they do that, they're briefly taking on that energy of, say, your mom and dad. And so the person might say something that your dad says because they're stepped into the energy of your dad, if you will. But how are these people saying something your father said without knowing he said that? They're trusting their intuition. For myself, if I was proxying as your father or your dad, I'm going to step back just a little bit. One of the last family matrix I was a part of, I did this for a good. We did the family matrix for a good friend of ours, and I happened to be their oldest son. And I thought it was really interesting because I couldn't hold still. I had to keep moving. Now, once I hugged back and I gave back that energy and I stopped proxying as their oldest son, I could sit still. But it was the weirdest thing. Granted, if I wanted to, I probably could have forced myself to sit still, but I was trying to be there for them, do whatever felt natural. And feeling natural meant moving. Like I would sit there and sway my arms and kind of pick up a foot, and I just, while I'm waiting for the facilitator to say talk to mom and dad, because again I was proxying as the oldest son, I'm waiting for the facilitator. They're talking to some of the other siblings and talking to them, and I'm just doing what I feel. And what I felt was that I couldn't sit still. Now, I didn't know if I had too much energy. I didn't know if this person was in a certain part of their life that was transitioning and they were moving. I didn't know what was going on with their oldest son. I had no idea. All I knew is how I felt taking on the proxy of their oldest son. Now, there were times when the facilitator came over and talked to me and asked me, well, how do you feel about what mom said, or how do you feel about what your little brother or sister said? I just trusted my instinct or my gut and said what I felt, and so that's why this person that say would be proxying is your dad, and if your dad says, what's right is right, going back to my last example, you have this feeling and you say it. You go, I don't know why this is popping into my head, but blah blah blah. And usually the person who, the family of focus, sitting on the side goes, whoa, I don't know how they knew to say that, other than they were in the energy of their father at the time, where I was in the energy of the oldest son. And so I just did what I felt. I said what I felt. I don't know. Hold on. So this is scientific or a force not understood? Is it more spiritual? Thank you for that question. That's an awesome question. Now, from what I understand, there is scientific backing with this. There is a certain amount that science has been able to track with this and confirm, but there's also a certain amount that is, like you say, spiritual, and that's what I'm trying to do with this channel, is help find where those two come together and mesh. Now, one thing that I'm going to say with scientific is sometimes scientific isn't always 100% exact. I'll say the same thing with the spirituality too. There is a certain amount. I'm not a scientist, so I couldn't necessarily get into it. There is something to this. It is very powerful. Everyone that I've ever either been involved with or just witnessed has been phenomenal, been huge. Like I said, I sat back and witnessed one of my aunt and uncle's family, and I could feel the energy of all their children because I personally knew them. When I participated in this family matrix for a good friend of mine, and I played their oldest son, and whatever he was feeling in a sense, and that was interesting too, because I could tell where this other, almost like an antenna, if you will, and I don't know if this is going to, hopefully this makes sense, and I was getting a signal beamed to me, and I was just acting on that signal. Just, oh, okay, well, I feel like I need to move. I feel like I shouldn't stop, and again, it wasn't like I was dancing. It was just kind of swaying my arms, picking up my feet, marching in place, and so I did what I was feeling, what the signal, I guess, and again, that's probably a bad way of explaining it, came to me. Now, I don't know how much science there is behind proxying. I do know that this does have some scientific. Let me double check my notes and see if there's a part that I wrote down with that. And hopefully, I plan on getting, like I said, the person that taught me this or trained me with this, I want to get them on, and they can hopefully answer some of these questions that I can't. What was your level of skepticism when you went to your first session? Do you believe mediums have the power to communicate with the dead? Okay, so there's two questions there. The first one, my skeptic level was, if we said 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, 10 being I'm 100% skeptical and I think it's all bullshit, and 1 being that I don't think any skepticism at all. I was probably closer to a 5 or a 6. Now, I didn't have full skepticism because my aunt and uncle, who were my mentors through BEST, were the ones that said, hey, you got to come check out this family matrix. So because I had heard about it from a reliable source, not some guy on Twitch like you, which I totally understand, that's why I tell people I'm not the expert. I'm just trying to learn this and bring it to you, and hopefully you can find some of this information on your own and do a little bit of your own digging and research. Anyway, back to your question. I was pretty skeptical, but I at least had an open mind, like you said. I'm willing to at least look into this. Go and try it one time. If I don't feel anything and I don't think that this was worth it, I don't have to go again. I don't have to, it was an experience that I experienced, and I get to move on from that. So my skepticism was fairly high, but I trusted the people that brought the information to me, and I went and did it. And afterwards, like I said, it was probably one of the most powerful techniques I had ever witnessed. I was blown away or flabbergasted. I was like, wow, I need to learn how to do this. To your second question, do I believe in mediums and they have the power to communicate with the dead? I believe there are some people that can. I definitely believe we all have certain gifts and powers that we can, say, tap into. I personally have not ran into a medium that I've seen that can communicate with the dead offhand, but I have definitely ran into certain energy people that can see or know things that I would say that are kind of beyond the seeing or knowing. I'll give you 2 examples real quick. This happened when I was studying with BEST, or bioenergetic synchronization technique. The first one was I was up in Seattle. Now, I used to wear dark clothes, not quite goth, but I'd wear black shirt, black pants, or I wore really dark clothes in a sense, mainly black. And I'm walking from one side of the room to the other, and this lady I've never met in my life. To this day, if you put her in a lineup, I don't think I could pick her out. I don't remember who she was, but she grabbed my arm and she stopped me and looked me dead in the eye, and she says, you need to stop wearing dark colors. She said, you are such a wonderful person and you have such a bright personality that you should wear brighter clothes. That these dark clothes aren't serving you, that they're basically warding people off, and people won't get to know what a great person you are. And so it was very interesting that, and again, I'm probably doing a horrible job of this, but she said certain things about me, explained certain things about, and not explained, but said certain things about my personality that I was like, how does this lady know this? Like, I've never met her in my life, and she's coming and telling me about myself that I wouldn't say that only I know, because other people that probably were close to me could see that as well. But it blew me away. I was like, wow. And now let's go to a skeptic side of it. Maybe my aunt or my uncle told her a little bit about me, and she just thought, well, this guy shouldn't wear black clothes, and so she came up to me and relayed some of this information that she got from my uncle and told me to stop wearing them. I don't know. I don't believe that was the case either. My uncle, he was already a master practitioner, and so he was working with a different group at the other side of the room. I just happened to be going from getting a drink or bathroom break and walking back to my table or my area where we were practicing, and it was crazy. I was like, holy cow, this lady, she had this certain information about me that I hadn't told her. I'd never really met her in my life, so I don't know how she would have known this other than she had, say, gifts like a medium. She had certain information that I don't know how she got. She just pulled it out of the ether, connected to that supercomputer, or that, super conscious, if you will. I don't know. Now, the second one, again, I was training with BEST, bioenergetic synchronization technique, and this was in Chicago. This person I was working with, they were part of my small group or my team, that we were practicing BEST on each other, and they said, I see creatures, or I see things. And I was like, what do you mean? And she says, well, like, for instance, with certain people, I see creatures on them. Like, I see a monkey on this person's shoulder, which tells me that person's really playful. Now, I didn't see any monkey on anybody's shoulder. I didn't see anything around anybody. But this lady was like, I see entities, even, if you will, maybe not creatures, around certain people that gives me a very good clue of who they are or what their personality's like. Now, these are 2 different people. One's in Seattle, and she, I would just say, was able to read my aura, or was able to read me. And from what she told me, she was spot on. That was another, like, almost mind-blowing, like, wow, how does this lady know this? And now the second person talking to him, it was very similar. This person, it was interesting. Even while I was laying on the table, the person that saw these entities or whatnot, they said they saw a green caterpillar in my lungs. And I was like, huh, what does that mean? And she says, I don't know. I don't fully know. Maybe you can tell me. That's why I'm asking. But I see, a green caterpillar in your lungs. And I have or used to smoke marijuana, and to me that was the click in my brain was, how does this lady know I smoke? And I'm not a daily or but I've tried it, I've done it, and probably fairly recent to that trip to Chicago or whatever. I don't remember. It was a while ago. It kind of blew me away. It really surprised me that she could see this in me, in a sense. And she also said there was a time where she saw negative entities around, negative people, like they looked black and kind of gross, and whenever she would see this kind of sludgy creature around somebody, she knew to stay away from that person. And so I hope that that's answered your question as far as do I believe in mediums and power to communicate with the dead. I have not ran into a medium yet that's communicated with the dead, but I have ran into very powerful people that have gifts that I couldn't explain or have knowledge that I don't know how they knew. So, yes, I do believe there are mediums. I do believe some people can communicate with the dead. I try to be somewhat skeptic, so that way I have an open mind and can look at both ways of the belief. Yeah, that's why this stuff fascinates me. There's a certain point where, yes, we can map it with science, and then there's a certain point where we just kind of either have to believe or disbelieve, and I guess I'm a believer myself. They say that it's interesting, and I'm incredibly skeptic, but I don't think that we can possibly know everything. And you're probably right. I don't think that we can know everything either, but I think there is certain things that we can know. Going back to applied kinesiology, they say that we can know everything through a yes or no muscle testing question. That's applied kinesiology. I'm not going to get too much into that. You can go watch some of the old videos I've done on YouTube, and I talk a little bit more about that, but I don't know. That's why I'm doing this. I don't think that we could know everything, but I do think that there are certain things that we do know. I think there's a certain part of us that, for lack of a better word, are divine or into, connected to our godhood, if you will. One moment. Have you ever watched The Spirit Molecule documenting about DMT? No, I have not. I've studied a little bit about DMT, and what I know about it is that most people that use it explain or describe going to the same place. That's about my extent of it. I think it's very fascinating that everybody who ever does it describes the same place and describes roughly the same thing. I did talk to another gentleman one time who said he had used it, and this was one of those aha moments that I really felt was impactful, I guess, to me and my journey. So one of my mentors says, relationships are the PhD of life. Being able to sit here and talk with you and connect with you and, build a relationship with you as well as other people outside, other friends, family, like that's the goal of life, in a sense, is to create and maintain relationships. Now, talking to this other gentleman who had used DMT quite a few times, he told me that he used to write down a bunch of questions, use the substance, I don't know, you smoke it or drink it, whatnot, but he would use the DMT, and then he would go to this, and again, this is how I understand it, that they were describing it, some type of like crystal palace or some other kind of dimension, and there were these other creatures or beings, if you will, that he would talk to, and he would ask questions. And one of the questions was kind of the entities, if you will, I'm not sure. He asked them questions, and one of the questions was kind of, that's stupid, and I don't think he worded it this way, but what is the meaning of life? Why are we here, if you will? And again, I don't remember what the question was, but he told me that they told him, the answer they gave him was connection with other human beings. And that's roughly what my other mentor said, where relationships are the PhD of life. So the goal in life, to some extent, from what I gathered, my personal journey, is to learn to live with each other and to build relationships and to help each other out, which was, again, another one of those kind of wow moments for me. Just, this is really awesome. There are different paths or avenues in my life that are all kind of matching up, saying the same thing, And this is after, I guess I've started down this road of spirituality, if you will. And so that's my experience with DMT. I don't know, honestly, I don't even know if I would ever try it or do it. It is very fascinating. I will look into that, though. It's the document's called Spirit Molecule. It sounds really interesting. I even have a friend that's a shaman that has done the ayahuasca stuff, and they call that the plant teacher, if I remember right. And they've told me, I wouldn't say similar, because it wasn't like DMT as far as they described the same place that they all went to, but he did describe the same teaching, if you will, that we are all oneness, and that roughly, and again I'm paraphrasing, our job is to help take care of each other. I fully believe that. I feel that. I try to be helpful when and where I can. Again, that's just me and maybe my journey. I'm not sure yours could be different, and you might be getting different information. Okay, I've never done DMT, but I've read tips, reports where people have come back feeling pressed because of learning how meaningless and small we are compared to the grand scheme of things. So I can understand why the connection could be the meaning of life if there's nothing else. Wow, awesome. Well said. I've never heard about the depression or the smallness myself. That is something maybe I'll have to ask my friend that has done it, or people that I've talked to that have done it. Now I have heard, as far as say ecstasy or mushrooms or other, and I know ecstasy is probably not a psychedelic, but I'll go with mind-altering substance, that afterwards you feel depressed. I don't think those drugs can compare either, and I don't know that. He says, I don't think those drugs can compare. I don't know that they can or not. I was going to kind of go into a scientific tangent with this, but just so, because that's a drop of dopamine. Okay, and that's kind of what I was going to get into, is from what I understand, with these, again, I was using ecstasy and mushrooms because that's the information that I've had and the people I've talked to that have used those. They said, afterwards you feel really depressed because you've used up all your dopamine, and so I don't know if maybe that's the same thing with the DMT, is that it releases this wonderful feel-goods in your brain, and so when you're done and off of it, you feel depleted and depressed and small because you don't have those anymore. But it is scientifically confirmed that DMT is released before we die. Yes, and when we're born, from what I've read, which is really interesting that your brain gets flooded with DMT at those two times. When you're first born, from what I understand, and when you die. I don't know what that means myself, but that is definitely fascinating, and even from what I'm saying with this, with Anchor of the Universe, it means something. Even if we don't know what it means something. Yeah, it's incredibly interesting and fascinating. It is, and that's, again, why I'm doing this and studying this. I don't consider myself an expert. I'm consider myself a student, and I'm trying to study this and bring this information to you. I hope that you can study it with me. And I've heard this several places, but in Dr. Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules of Life, An Antidote to Chaos, if I remember that's right, 12 Rules of Life, I believe. He says there's a rule that everybody knows something you don't, so listen to them. And I totally believe that's right. Oh, that's awesome. He says, that's so weird, I was just reading that. Or she says, that's so weird, I was just reading that. I try to read a book a week. I just got done with that book a couple weeks ago. I'm now going back and rereading my library. Okay, you haven't got through all the rules. It's a great book. I would just say continue reading it. To some extent, you can even cursory probably glance at the rules and still get a rough idea of what they are or mean. But there is one rule in there that says, everybody knows something you don't. And again, I don't know if that's how the rule's phrased, but that's how I understood it, and that's how I say it. You might, again, you're asking me about DMT and some of this other stuff. It sounds like you know more about that than I do, and you've done more research into it than I have. And that's awesome. Thank you for coming here and sharing some of this information with me. Same with, the documentary on the spirit molecule. I personally don't know much about it, but as something I will start looking into and listening. I listen to the podcasts, namely Joe Rogan's. Yes, I'm a fan of Joe Rogan's podcast too. Awesome. Hopefully I can build this to be as big or close to his. Oh, Joe Rogan narrates the Spirit Molecule documentary. That's awesome. Yeah, I think Joe Rogan's a great guy. I think he's very knowledgeable. I enjoy his talk because, again, if he doesn't know it, he brings people on there that do know about it and can help him to understand, and hopefully that I can do that too. I plan on bringing my mentor, Chris. He's a master elite best practitioner. He's the one that kind of helped me start this energy working journey, and so I want to get him on here, maybe interview him. Also Linnell, she's the one that certified or taught me Family Matrix. She's also a top rapid eye instructor, so hopefully maybe they can answer some of these questions that I can't. I'm not sure, but I'm thinking either later this week or next week we'll have Chris on here No, that's awesome. I also apologize. I'm actually over time. I have to get going. Really, just thank you. I appreciate you being here and asking these questions. I hope I done a good job in answering them. At least gave you some good food for thought, at least. But I apologize. I have to sign off. I've got to get going. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your subscription. I appreciate you being here and asking questions. Tomorrow I'll be on again at around 11, and maybe I'll try and do a little bit of research into some of the stuff and we can talk more about that. I just wanted to at least let you know about Family Matrix, make you a little bit aware of it, and hopefully you can look into that yourself, maybe even find somebody in your area that's doing Family Matrix or family sculpting, and maybe they can answer your questions better than I can. I'm not sure. Yeah, please come back again. Thank you, thank you. I wish you all a blessed, wonderful, amazing day, however you want to say that. Thanks again. Take care.